Hey guys, are you looking to invest your money without doing all the research yourself? Well, let me introduce you to ARK. ARK currently actively manages 5 ETFs: ARK K, ARK Q, ARK W, ARK G, and ARK F. These ETFs are all about technology and innovation. Over the next decade, Cathie Wood, who is the fund manager, believes this is just going to take off. I invested $10,000 in 2 of these actively managed funds. You're going to know what funds those are and why. This video is going to be broken up in 3 different parts. 1, I'm going to give an overview of ARK's investment strategy. 2, I'm going to tell you my favorite ETFs and where I invested my $10,000. And I'm actually going to continue to invest money every month using a dollar cost average system. And part 3, I'm going to compare ARK ETF versus other ETFs such as VU, which tracks the S&P 500. And by the end of the video, you're going to understand why I believe ARK is going to crush these other ETFs by a landslide. Okay, this is ARK Invest's website. As we can see on the right hand side, we have the 5 actively managed ETFs that I'm talking about in this video. And just below that, they have 2 index ETFs as well. So what is ARK all about? I'm going to give you guys a quick overview on what that is. ARK believes innovation is key to growth. We aim to capture long-term growth and capital appreciation created by disruptive innovation. ARK's exchange-traded funds seek to offer attractive performance, uncorrelated to traditional investment strategies, access to companies in some of the most promising areas of the economy, exposure to aggressive growth through the fund rather than individual stocks. They do a little overview here of technology and innovation that's occurred over the last 200 and some years. There's been the steam engine, the combustion engine, which is the big one, telephone, you can go through it and see. And then their 5 areas that they're targeting is next generation internet, DNA sequencing, automation, energy storage, blockchain technology. So down here they talk about how they've seen more innovation than ever before. This is partly due to during crisis, innovation thrives. So where did I invest my $10,000? I invested into ARK K and ARK W. ARK K is by far their biggest fund. It has $4.8 billion under management. And this fund focuses on genomic revolution, industrial revolution, next generation internet, and fintech technology. So ARK K is my favorite ETF of their funds, but my second favorite is ARK W. This is the next generation internet fund. This fund is smaller, it has $1.3 billion under management, and has seen massive growth over the last year. And this fund has actually outperformed the innovation fund that I mentioned earlier. This one, since inception, has returned an average of 32% a year. What I love about this fund is that I believe that the internet is very new. It's only been around the last 20 years, so we're just on the cusp of it. And if you're a strong believer in technology, social media platforms, that they're gonna be relevant and prosper over the next 10 years, this is a fund that you need to consider. So with ARK K returning 48% year to date and ARK W returning 62%, let's compare this to VU, which tracks the S&P 500, and see how it's performing. So year to date, you would actually have lost money right now in VU. Obviously, there has been the whole coronavirus, which has really impacted many businesses. And of course, the S&P 500 is made of 500 biggest companies, many of those being directly affected. So to do a more fair comparison, let's look back the last 10 years. The S&P 500 has returned at approximately 11% year over year, compared to ARK Innovation's 26% year over year and ARK W's 32%. Now, past performance doesn't guarantee future returns. However, it is something to take into consideration. And just think about this from a logical standpoint. The S&P 500 is made up of 500 companies, and many of these companies might not make it through this crisis. However, ARK is focused on technology and innovation. Right now that is thriving, and I'm a big believer it's going to continue to do so for the next 10 to 20 years. But hey, don't trust me, trust Cathie Wood. She's the fund manager, and in my opinion, one of the greatest investors of all time, comparable with Warren Buffett and Peter Lynch. A little bit about Cathie Wood. Wood was an assistant economist at Capital Research from 1977 to 1980, and then at Jennison Associates, where she held various positions including chief economist, equity research analyst, and portfolio manager. Okay, let's take a look at the top 5 holdings in each of the funds to see what's in there. In the Innovation Fund, the top 5, Tesla, Invitae, Square, Roku, CRISPR. Those 5 combined is 32% of the fund. Taking a look at the Autonomous Technology and Robotics ETF, they have Tesla as well, Materialize, 2Inc, Zinc, and Protolabs. The Next Generation Internet ETF, Tesla, Roku, Square, Huya, and Facebook. Genomic Revolution ETF, ARK G. It's got Invitacorp, CRISPR, Illumina, Combigen, and Arcturus Therapeutics. So no Tesla on this one. They're huge on Invitae though. Very bullish. This one's a really interesting one that I'm considering investing in. So they got Square, Microlibra. This one's down in South America. Zillow Group, Tencent, C, which is in Singapore. This is a company that's really grown over the last 6 months here. So when making a decision on what ETF you want to invest in, it really comes down to what you're most bullish on. If you want one that encompasses a bit of everything, that's really the innovation one you want to invest in. Okay guys, let's dig in how ARK actually does the research. They were able to predict Tesla in 2018 was going to skyrocket in price. This was despite other analysts being totally wrong about Tesla. So how did they do it? Well guys, ARK uses something called Wright's Law. What is Wright's Law? It was pioneered by Theodore Wright in 1936. Wright's Law aims to provide a reliable framework for forecasting cost declines as a function of cumulative production. Specifically, it states that for every cumulative doubling of units produced, costs will fall by a constant percentage. Guys, this is the big reason how ARK got it right with Tesla. ARK has done a paper on their research with Tesla breaking this down. While they were doing this, most of the other analysts was still looking at Tesla as just a car company. In 2018, Cathie Wood was the only analyst saying Tesla was going to be $4,000 a share in just a few years. People weren't taking her serious at this time, but let's take a look back and see what she had to say.
We learned about their artificial intelligence chip. We saw the specs. And our analyst, James Wang, came from NVIDIA. That's what they're replacing. And he said, oh my goodness, and he's going to write something this Wednesday about it. This leapfrogs the competition. And they're at least 3, if not 4 years ahead of the competition. And then a few months later, execution went up when not only did they not lose in the third quarter $700 million, but they made, this is cash flow, $1.4 billion. So that was a miss in terms of consensus expectations of roughly $2 billion. That's what happens with exponential growth.
ETFs do charge an expense ratio. For ARK, that is 0.75%, but for that 0.75%, you're getting a ton of value. You're getting a team of analysts doing all the research for you. They're actively trading these stocks. They know when to buy. They know when to sell. As an individual investor, it's just feasibly impossible to have these kind of resources. Now, if you look at an ETF like VU, their expense ratio is only 0.03%. That's because it's not actively traded. They're just following the S&P 500. So they don't need a team of analysts. They're not always doing research. They're not buying and selling stocks. So it's much lower, but your potential return is also lower. If you're young, wanting to make more than 7 to 11% of return a year, and you're willing to take a little bit more risk, then ARK is a great option. Okay, so that's an overview of ARK ETFs and why I invested $10,000. And I'm going to continue to invest using the dollar cost averaging system for ARK. If you guys found any value in this video, please leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, hit the subscribe button.